Assalamu alaikum. It's a little dark here, but maybe I can the other way around. I'm in a new room. I'm trying to try out a new access to internet because I switched to fiber. So let's see if I can change my angle and then have some little light on here. Okay, let's see. Okay. My topic today basically is critique of critical thinking, which is like, in real terms, it's like a juxtaposition, or we call it a irony. Yeah? I'm critically evaluating critical thinking in order to get people to think holistically. So it's like what? It's like um, like a paradox. Okay. Kind of an irony, etc. But let's go through that and see what I basically am saying to the academic world who look at quality education and think that if they talk about critical thinking, then this is like the way forward. Okay. So I gave a lecture to my students today on this, and so. Let's deal with it, inshallah. I'm going to take out from the notes that I did. And what I did is to put a table together, like juxtaposition the table in terms of what is comparative between critical thinking and the other kind of thinking that I propose is evaluative thinking. Okay, so there I have on my phone a kind of, I don't know whether you can see it now, you can't see it on the phone, a kind of a juxtaposition of the difference between critical thinking versus evaluative thinking. Now, critical thinking basically is very negative in real terms, and evaluative thinking is positive. Critical thinking perhaps starts from a point of mistrust, that what they're doing, what is being done is not really right or should be investigated. And evaluative thinking starts from a trusting point of view. Then the next part is critical thinking is argumentative, whereas evaluative thinking is more harmonizing. So again, our first column, which is critical thinking, is egotistical. It's about the self and its, self-opinion, etc., opinionatedness. And evaluative thinking is more humble. Then you have critical thinking as dismissive, more dismissive in terms of the style, etc. And then you have evaluative thinking, more collaborative. Critical thinking can turn to become abusive, whereas evaluative thinking is caring. Critical thinking is judgmental, whereas evaluative thinking is inclusive. Critical thinking tends to lean towards ingratitude, while evaluative thinking is based on gratitude. So critical thinking often comes from a feature of disbelief, and evaluative thinking comes more from a point of belief. Then again, what sometimes pushes critical thinking is faithlessness, and what pushes or motivates evaluative thinking is faithfulness. Critical thinking tends to be demeaning, insulting, whereas evaluative thinking is encouraging. Critical thinking creates a lot of doubt, haziness, whereas evaluative thinking comes from a clarity point of view or moves towards clarity. So critical thinking can be and has been destructive, whereas evaluative thinking is developmental. or constructive, if we can use that as well. Then critical thinking is flaw focused, looking for the flaws, and evaluative thinking is gem focused, looking for the good in it, the best in it, or the things that shines out of it. So critical thinking can be disheartening, whereas evaluative thinking is motivational. Critical thinking leans toward disconnecting, whereas evaluative thinking leans towards connecting. Critical thinking obviously criticizes, and evaluative thinking acknowledges. Critical thinking has an effect of a kind of a sadness, whereas evaluative thinking brings happiness. Critical thinking tends to develop stress, whereas evaluative thinking causes relaxation. Critical thinking focuses on problems, and evaluative thinking deals with looking for solutions. Critical thinking disunites, while evaluative thinking unites. Critical thinking fractionalizes everything, whereas evaluative thinking looks for the holistic, integrative feature, is holistic. Critical thinking creates animosity, while evaluative thinking creates benevolence. So there we have about 26 or 27 comparison juxtaposition facts or features of critical thinking and evaluative thinking. So what I am suggesting, or what I'm putting forward, is evaluative thinking and not critical thinking. So the critique of critical thinking, as I say, it's like an irony. I'm criticizing or looking at the negative of critical thinking to bring it towards a positive. But that is not meaning that I'm leaving it or rejecting it. I'm just saying this is a different way of looking at the value of thinking. And thinking primarily is an act of the soul, not the brain. The brain is just the organ that gets the instruction from the soul to make the decisions. And we must realize that the Western world has affected our mindset, or created mindsets through vocabulary, through words, etc. And the reason why academia and politicians, etc., educationists talk about critical thinking, it's because that's where their bread and butter lies. They have to be critical in their thinking to produce papers and to publish, the PhDs, etc., etc. This is more for the kind of the social sciences, etc. Where if you take other sciences like hard sciences, for instance, like it looks more for the value in things. If I speak about scientific technology, technology looks at nature in order to find from nature ideas how to create technology. So nature is far more advanced than technology. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings us to the ayat of nature, asks us to look at the miracles of nature and then come to the conclusion, to the tawheed, which is the holistic features that Allah is the creator of everything, and everything depends on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy. If one looks at the evaluative thinking, then comes from faith, belief in Allah, trust in Allah, trust in the prophets, etc. Whereas critical thinking comes from your more egotistical philosophies that stand against faith, tries to argue against faith, and use this tool of critical thinking to try and break down the truths and the books of the prophets. And some of our Muslims fall for the trick because they want to talk, especially academia sometimes. They use the terms in academics in order to present their papers, not realizing that they're using actually traps, mind traps, to trap the public. when they start using these terms. So my evaluation of what's happening is to see how can we bring a negative into a positive, but we have to look at making people realize how negative some of the terms are, which trips us in terms of planning. So if you look at planning of education, they look at policies. What policies can we create? You know, and what was negative in this particular feature? Now, can we create a new policy? But policies basically is there to control the masses. It's not really for the benefit, because there's only one policy in education, in any kind of thing, in business as well. Provide people what they need, and Allah will provide you what you want. That's a hadith. Try the best for you to provide people what they need, and everything else will fall into place. Part of the biggest political trick today is to, because there's difficulty in buying and selling in terms of marketplace. People now in governments use electricity and water to fund their particular political access and control of the resources by making people pay an enormous amount for electricity and water. And that resource in actual fact should be free. And if that was free, then more people can benefit. But in a capitalistic world, it is tap out of the masses what you can get for the few elites that are the rich, and use the buffer group, which is the middle group, which is academia and the management sector of the middle class, to actually protect the interests of the rich against the poor. And so it's a kind of a fear factor. If you look at the advertising of loans at banks, at interest rates, they always tell you, like, you know, make a decision and you can take out the loan to have a better car, etc. It's all about trying to be better than someone else. It's all that competition. But they're selling you debt, actually. They're not selling you progress, they're selling you debt. But they play on the ego in order to be better than the poor person. So a very interesting thing is that you'll find modeling is normally done in poor areas. The juxtaposition in terms of art, the negative with the positive, so that the person who's the middle class will now want that fashion in order not to be poor. So they juxtaposition that in terms of the camera work and the filming, etc., advertising, so that they trap the middle class into debt with fashion in order to try and live up with the Joneses who already have the money to do whatever they want to. But the middle class, you want to put it that way, are trapped through education and advertising and debt, so that they create the buffer group, because the masses of poor and the few elite, they get the protection from the middle class. So if the middle class wakes up, and hopefully that's what I'm trying to do, and realize how really powerful they are to change the world with small amounts, like I'm saying 100 rand in order to develop families and upgrade them, increase them, etc., and advance them fast in terms of communities, everybody can benefit. But it's going to be difficult for the middle class to just wrap it around their heads, to take the chains off of the vocabularies that have been projected to them all the time within the academic world. What is progress, and this is your advancement, that is, you have to have a degree. These are all lies, basically. It's not happening. It creates an enormous amount of stress for people. So critical thinking is actually one of the keys that lock the mind and prevents and creates the individualism that people cannot stand together, because they always criticize the other all the time and keep one another away from each other. So that's the way it is, and that's the way the shaitan works. You know, is stroking your ego by criticizing other people. So you'll find many lectures actually that tells you about the problem of the people. In order to raise the person in leadership, to raise his particular position by criticizing the masses. And when you come along and you talk about uplifting the masses, positively motivating them to change, you find some of the leaders will tell you, no, 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 you can't do that. You spare the people, you know. That is incorrect. It's correct to uplift the people. So that's one policy, as is hadith. Provide people what they need and Allah will provide you what you need. That is trusting Allah. That's positive thinking. That's holistic thinking. That's valuative thinking. And that's where I wanted to take this video about valuative thinking. I'm sorry my lights are not so good, but I mean, I hope you find the interesting the content that I've got, inshallah. Shukran wallahu ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum.